All right. All right. Welcome, everybody. I am Matt Mason. I'm Executive Director of the Nebraska Writers Collective. And tonight we have a poetry writing workshop with Cambridge, Massachusetts poet Adam Stone. Adam is a fantastic writer. He's been part of the poetry slam scene all around everywhere in the East Coast, it seems, and done a lot of performance and work with the National Poetry Slam and other things like that. But he is a fantastic writer and one of the most diligent readers I've come across. So he's got a lot to teach us about writing, and so I will turn it to Adam.
Thank you, Matt. I recognize many of the people here, but there's a couple I don't. So to give you an idea of the workshop we're going to do tonight, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about manuscripts. It's not necessarily designed for like getting a manuscript published. It's kind of like beating writer's block by creating an idea for yourself, like getting yourself an entry-level poem to an idea and then building off of it to create like a manuscript and to keep writing. I had a period a couple of years ago where I found myself kind of like, oh, I keep writing the same thing over and over again, and I'm really boring myself. How do I combat that? And it was by reading a lot of work by other people, finding out what worked, and then also like challenging myself to write in response to other writers or being inspired by them. So I wasn't sure what workshop I was going to do tonight until I did the reading last night, and a bunch of people had asked me questions about like, how do you do these projects? So that's what I'm going to talk about. For starters, though, I have a couple questions for. I'm going to ask everybody, even though I know some of you, to tell me a little bit about yourself and where you are on your poetry journey and sort of what you were looking for in a generative writing workshop. So I'm going to start by asking Valerie, and then I'm just going to go down the line as I see people.
So I finished a manuscript about unsolved mysteries, poems, and it was really going well and easy, and I feel like my poetry evolved to a better spot. And once that was done, I feel like I don't really like know where I'm going. So I think this will be really good for that.
Cool. Excellent. Hans. Nope, you're on mute right now, Hans. Sorry. Nope, I still can't hear you. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I sure can.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm a writer poet, and I'm sort of working with lyrical prose right now. But I
Excellent.
thought step in and just kind of see what was going and see if I can help with suggesting stuff for the other writers in the workshop, or if I can read some of my own stuff. Whatever you have going there. So.
Cool. Yeah, and all these prompts will work for like prose stuff too. It's not poetry specific. So, okay. Excellent. All right, Holly. Oops.
Hey, you just want to know like what I'm working on, or what was the question? Sorry, my internet's really unstable.
Not a problem at all. Yeah, just know like what you were hoping for out of the workshop.
Okay. Well, yeah, I am working on a bunch of manuscripts. I write fiction, essays, and poetry. So I'm just really trying to determine where to focus my energy, I guess. So yeah, I think your suggestion of reading people and writing in response, I'm very interested in. So I just kind of want to see where it goes.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you. Ariana.
Hi. So I haven't actually been writing a ton lately. I was in a car accident in December of 2019 and got pretty heavily concussed. And so I've been like kind of working through figuring out what my relationship to language is like now. And so like I've written, I think like one poem in the last year, but it came from a very different place and I think is like a lot better in some ways than like stuff that I had been working on before then. And so I have a bunch of like very like loosely conceptualized manuscripts that I'm like interested in writing right now and like kind of toying with, but haven't actually really dug into it all. So I'm really excited about this.
Awesome. Thank you. Juanita, or is it Jonita?
It's Jonita.
Hey, Jonita.
I just like, I don't know, I've been thinking about entering some like poetry competitions. So I just wanted to like try new prompts and stuff because a lot of my poems have like mostly started to sound like introductions to an essay instead of an actual poem. So I just like wanted some advice and see where like it went from there.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you. Tiana.
Yeah, so I'm a senior in high school and I've been doing LTAB for 4 years, and I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm hoping to be entering some poetry competitions and I really want to strengthen my writing skills, but I've been hitting a lot of writer's block, and it's all getting kind of repetitive, and I feel like I'm rewriting the same stuff over and over again. So I just kind of wanted a way to find some new inspiration. So
Cool. Excellent. I hope to help with that tonight. Jeff.
Yeah, I have a similar answer to as Valerie. I just finished a manuscript and have sent it off to a few places, and now I'm kind of looking for a new project to start. I kind of have a few things that are like one kind of science fiction and one kind of horror that is like poem flash fiction things, and I'd kind of like to continue with that, but I don't really know how to. I don't have a end goal in mind as to how to make it a real project, other than just having these two things that kind of go together.
Cool. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about is some manuscripts that are like one theme and some that are like 2 or 3 different things that really gel together unexpectedly. So
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to it there. And people looking for prompts, Adam has a whole series of prompts, tips from the bar. I've gotten quite a few good poems out of. So
Thank you.
Go look up his.
It's a book.
Yeah, I'm in that book actually.
You are. I'll plug that book later. And Barrett.
I think my goals are kind of twofold. One is that I'm not very good at writing from prompts. Like I'm very reactive just in terms of like a thing happens and I have to write about it and then I write about it and then it's done. But I'm not very good at generating work without sort of like outside incitement. So anything of getting better at that would be cool. I'm excited for that aspect of this. And I think another thing is I'm very slowly working on a chapbook / manuscript project and don't really know how to do that.
Cool. Well, hopefully we will help deal with that tonight.
Hooray.
And Matt, how about you?
I am just eager to have someone force me to do a little bit of writing tonight. For better part of 30 years, I had a system where I'd write a new poem every week. And, at the start of this pandemic, I kept up okay. And I've just been missing more deadlines than ever because I just don't have the concentration that I would like. So a little bit of writing, but I just really look forward to being forced to write something.
Cool. Well, we will get to writing momentarily. The first thing I'm going to do is talk about a bunch of books, like real quick rundowns of them that I suggest if you want a particular type. If you're looking to write a particular style of manuscript, I'm going to give different examples of things that I've enjoyed. And if you've also read them, feel free to chime in. But again, this is going to be kind of super fast. The first one is one we talked about last night, which is The Autobiography of Red by Anne Carson, which is a narrative poetry collection. Like, it is a complete story from beginning to end. It's chronological, and it's based on the labors of Hercules, and it's really cool. It's a novel in verse, which is tough to do. I've read like four maybe that I've been like, oh, this is excellent, and that's one of them. It's Anne Carson's Autobiography of Red. Another type of like wholesale manuscript where you're like, okay, I'm gonna do one thing, but it isn't necessarily a novel in verse per se, is Jim Daniels has a book called Punching Out, and it's all poems about being working class and working in an auto factory when he was younger. It's really wonderful. I think Kristen O'Keefe Aptowitz recommended Jim Daniels to me, and I've liked most of his work. Some of the language and ideas are very 1980s / early 90s, but in a nostalgic way, not in a painful, like, oh, I don't know if I needed to read that way. Another one that I think a lot of people in the slam poetry community have read, which is also sort of a novel in verse, is Deaf Republic by Ilya Kaminsky, which is an amazing book. It is somewhat chronological, but more experimental than Autobiography of Red. And it is a fun, fast read that also includes like sign language and elements of deafness, which deaf education was actually my major in college. So I was super excited about this book. Another cool idea for writing a manuscript is writing a series of poems that are connected by like a character concept, not necessarily the same character in every poem, but the same archetypal character. And my recommendation for that is Daphne Gottlieb's Final Girl, which is all poems that somehow connect to the final girl trope in horror movies. So like the woman who survives, the sociopath, psychopath, evil villain. Another one which Matt was saying he just ordered, which is a more conceptual one long poem experience, is called Jazzercise is a Language, which is it's a great cover too, but it's Gabriel Ojeda Sagwe. And this is a book that it all relates to 1980s jazzercise and sweating to the oldies style exercises, and also how that affects his gender experience and sexuality. And it's truly wonderful. It's a book that plays around with form in that the first third of the book is all really short poems that use white space. The second third is all 2-column poems that actually the 2 columns don't interact, which is interesting. And then by the end of it, it's just a lot of white space and justified text, which I thought was cool. The last of the books that are kind of like one through line, although it has 3 important sections, is Donald Hall's Without, which is a poem about, it's one long book about the death of his wife. It's not a light read. The first third is dealing with her cancer. The second is one long poem called Without, about her actual death. And the third part is surviving after her death and what that's done to him. I did a 24-hour reading once and I made the mistake of at 3 a.m. reading this book, plus it references poems by his wife, who is also a poet, Jane Kenyon. And so I was going back and forth between the 2 poems, and that was not an emotionally healthy decision for 3 a.m. when you've been reading poems for 7 hours straight. I don't recommend it, but it's a great book. Another book that is autobiographical but split into sections, that's a really cool format, is Satan Says by Sharon Olds. And how she separates her book is she has a series of poems about being a daughter. So it's all about growing up and her relationship with her family, her parents and her grandparents. The second section is about being a woman, and it's about her dating experiences and her life sort of coming into her own. The third section is Mother, which is just about her children and like sort of calls back a little bit to her relationship with her parents. And then finally there's Journey, which sort of examines the whole experience. And that was, I read that in college and it's still like stayed with me. It's not my favorite book by her, but I like the way it's organized more than I like some of the other books that she's put out. The next thing I'm going to suggest, I could have picked any book by Patricia Smith. Anything from the 21st century by Patricia Smith is themed and it's really well put together. I think the most recent one is Incendiary Art, which is another book that's in multiple sections. And it is all about the experience of being Black in America, and it's linked to, there's a lot of fire imagery and there's a lot of violence in the book. It is still beautiful because Patricia Smith is probably the most talented poet to come out of slam. And yeah, it's got 4 sections, one that's just about fire, a completely heart-wrenching section called When Black Men Drown Their Daughters. That will wreck you. Also not good for 3 a.m. reading. And then Accidental, which deals with accidental death. And then Shooting into the Mirror, which has a lot of elegies in it. It's, again, all her books are excellent, but the way that one is structured is really cool and sort of changed the way I thought about working on manuscripts. We're almost done here. We can get to the generative writing in a moment. Another kind of a book that like 3 or 4, actually it's probably like 10 years ago now, someone suggested to me that I love that's sectioned really well. Again, anything by Kevin Young, but the first thing I read by him was Dear Darkness. And this is a book that deals with food and the experience of how it affects culture. And there's a blues section, there's several blues sections in it. There's sections where he just talks about relationships with families. There's an excellent kind of like flow to the narrative. And then at the end, food. Another type of collection that I like is one that's all similar styles of poems. I think this is the hardest one to do, to write a similar patterns of poems all on the same subject that still remains interesting. And one of the few books that succeeded in that for me is Terrence Hayes' American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassins, which are exactly that, American sonnets. So they're 14 lines and they're exceptional. And I think they're all called American Sonnet, for My Past and Future Assassin. And finally, something that breaks the mold that I thought was an interesting concept, and I haven't succeeded in doing it. The only other book that I've seen that sort of does this is Scott Woods's, I think it's Urban Contemporary History Month. But Dispatch from the Future by Lee Stein is written as a choose your own adventure book of sorts, where as you read it, it's okay, Valerie, it's not actually a choose your own adventure book. It starts with like a quote from a choose your own adventure book. And then as you go into it, she occasionally uses numbers. And if you turn to that page, even if it's in the middle of the poem, it feels like it's flowing from the last line that you read on one page to the first line on the next. It's really excellent. So yeah, Lee Stein, Dispatch from the Future, a book that I literally bought for its cover in a bookstore that I'd never been to before, that I just went, oh, that looks interesting. And I loved it. So that's like a list of books that I'd recommend for putting together a manuscript. And now we're going to get to the generative writing portion. First up, Ariana, would you be comfortable in reading a poem?
Sure.
All right, I'm going to send you I'm going to put a link in the chat. We're going to do a generative prompt based on the first poem in Danez Smith's book, Homie,
Okay.
which is an amazing book. And I'm going to send you the link and give you a couple minutes or a minute or two to look at it. Have you read this before?
Yeah, I have
Cool.
a copy of Homie. It's loading for me.
Cool. So Ariana's going to read this poem, which is great. Dinez Smith's Homie is a fantastic book. I've always liked Dinez's stuff, and it keeps getting better. So we're going to listen to this poem, and then I will tell you the first prompt, which is we'll probably be able to guess by hearing the poem basically what the prompt is going to be. So Ariana?
My president. Today, I elect Jonathan, 11 and already making roads out of water, young genius, blog writer, little community activist, curls tight as pinky swears, black is my nation. I trust the world in his tender, blooming hands. I trust him to tell us which rivers are safe to drink and which hold fish like a promise. And I elect Eve Ewing, who I know would misfrizzle the country into one big classroom where grandmas finger paint the national budget and uncles stand around smoking blacks plotting on stars for our escape. She could walk to the podium at her inauguration and say, "The future is now." And we'd all marvel at the sun and moon looping the sky like a gif as the cars learned to fly and our skin grew bulletproof. And Colin Kaepernick is my president, who kneels on the air, bent toward a branch, throwing apples down to the children and vets. And Rihanna is my president, walking out of global summits with wine glass in hand, our taxes returned in gold to dust our faces into coins. And my mama is my president. Her grace stunts on amazing, brown hands breaking brown bread over mouths of the hungry until there are none unfed. And my grandma is my president, and her cabinet is her cabinet because she knows to trust what the pan knows, how the skillet wins the war. And the man I saw high kicking his way down the river, he is my president. And the trans girl making songs in her closet, spitting the dark into a booming dress, she too is my president. And Shonda Rhimes is my president. And Nate Marshall is my president. And Trina is my president. And the boys outside Walgreens selling candy for a possibly fictional basketball team are my presidents. And the bus driver who stops after you yell, "Wait," only twice is my prez. And the dude at the pizza spot who will give you a free slice if you are down to wait for him to finish the day's fourth prayer is my president. And my auntie, only a few months clean, but clean, she is my president. And my neighbor who holds the door open when my arms are full of laundry is my president. And every head nod is my president. And every child singing summer with a red sweet tongue is my president. And the birds and the cooks and the single moms especially, and the weed dealers and the teachers and the meter maid who lets you slide, and the cab drivers who stop, and the nurse's swollen feet, and the breeder's exhausted hands, and the bartender, and Beyonce, and all her kids, and the rabbi, and the sad girls, and the leather daddy who always stops to say good morning, and the boy crying on the train, and the sudden abuelo who rubs his back, and the uncle who offers him water, and the drag queen who begins to hum, "Oh, my presidents, my presidents, my presidents, my presidents, show me to our nation. My only border is my body. I sing your names, your names, my mighty anthem."
Thank you, Ariana. That was fantastic. As I knew it would be. I knew you would like. I'm excited. Thank you. So you could probably guess what the prompt is going to be, but I will read you how I wrote it originally. I have a whole suite of prompts from the first dozen poems in Homie, and the first one is the My President prompt. Basically, no matter who you are, you probably think at least one American president in your lifetime is a garbagey piece of unrecyclable garbage. So nominate a list of people you wish were the president of wherever you live. They can be politicians, celebrities, your relatives, cartoon characters. This is your list. Forget everybody else's rules. Just present a nomination list of people you wish were president and why you think they'd be a great president. So that's going to be the generative portion of the workshop. I'm going to say take about 15 minutes. Does that sound good to everybody? To work on things?
Can you say what the prompt was one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to make a list of nominations for people you wish were president. I will cut and paste it into the chat. Boom. Thank you for the suggestion, Baron. There it is. So yeah, nominate a list of people you wish were president of wherever you live. They can be politicians, celebrities, your relatives, cartoon characters. It's your list. Forget everybody else's rules. Just a list of people you think would make great presidents and why. I like Dinez's because it starts off with a specific list of writers who I know and I agree are awesome, and then it gets into like the general people. But you don't have to do that. It's your list, it's your prompt. I'm gonna set my timer for about 15 minutes, and I'm also gonna write to this prompt. So here we go. Okay, it's perfectly acceptable to kind of like keep working a little bit if you want. It's also totally acceptable not to be done. It's 15 minutes. I have rarely ever seen anyone in 15 minutes come up with like the perfect draft of a poem with a beginning, a middle, and an end. So yeah, this is just supposed to be like a jumping off point. And I'm gonna ask if anyone would like to read, mention that in the chat. I'm not going to make anyone read. It's not that kind of generative workshop. But if you feel comfortable reading what you've come up with, let me know in the chat. I will read what I've got first. It doesn't have a title, surprisingly, other than, I guess, my president. I'm not going to elect a cat, even though mine are sometimes cuddly, always direct in their intentions and always there for me when I'm stressed out. My parents aren't making the list either. I didn't get a choice during their first 4 terms, and while I stopped thinking of them as fascist when I was 15, I still moved away, not wishing another 4 years under their leadership. But they're totally hired for advisory roles. My president needs to be someone new to me, a tastemaker whose tongue is shaped differently than mine, bumped sour where mine is sweet, and bumped umami where my tongue doesn't fully understand the definition of umami but nods politely anyway. My president doesn't want the office but is needed in the office. The journalist more interested in improving society for everyone than making themselves more comfortable, so I nominate Scott Woods. The unbribable safety inspector who lets things slide when they are unaffordable, but unaffordable means that the business owner or country fair ride operator or restaurateur is paying all their employees a living wage and not skimming any money for himself or shareholders. So I do not nominate anyone I've ever worked for. I nominate the person who holds the subway door open for someone running out of breath. So I nominate by sight the people whose names I've never asked for. I don't nominate the moon, though I appreciate what it does with the tides. I nominate the sun because I've never sensed malice when it's hurt someone. I nominate anyone with a good recipe for panucci fudge and an excellent track record for making it and giving it to strangers, because that takes patience and love to create it and an amazing generosity not to eat it all yourself. I nominate pens that stay inked until a poem is over. My president is a joke that makes everyone laugh at no one's expense. I nominate feeling full after breakfast. I nominate a surprise twist in a book that feels earned and heartwarming. I nominate everyone who reads for pleasure over critique. I nominate nominators, denominators in a relationship, demonstrators protesting things that don't benefit them directly. I nominate blank space at the bottom of a page where it feels purposeful and not empty. All right. Oh, I'm psyched for participation. Yay. All right, I am going to call people in the order that they mentioned it in the chat. So, Matt Mason, you are up next.
Woo. All right. No title also yet. My plan is to get Max elected president. I realize the laws may add difficulties as he is a dog, but he is a calm kind of influencer. There is no tumult, no controversy, no tweets. He is a security hawk. Ask any package deliverer. He is gentle with his requests, appreciative toward any kindness, a role model of relaxation framed in the smallest square of natural light. Give him just a bowl of food, crunchy, nothing special, and he will give you everything you need.
Thank you, Matt. And yeah, while I say I would never nominate a cat, I would 100% nominate a dog. Yeah,
Sensible.
wise choice. Barrett, you were next in the chat.
Okay. I went the route of several nominations. I, the delegate from the state of me, rise to nominate the following candidates for president of wherever. Stefan Kostelitz is my president because he was the first older kid who was nice to me, and I told him I admired him and Nelson Mandela, and years later he remembered. Nelson Mandela is not my president because he's dead. Don't be ridiculous. This is a realistic list. But people who pick up worms on the sidewalk and move them back to the grass are my president. And everyone who's ever run out into a thunderstorm to get something for someone they love is my president. And my friend who teaches me to find joy in little walks outside is my president, because she knows why ivy sticks to walls. And my friend who plans lessons with me is my president. And my friend who sent me an Appa plushie because they just thought I should have something soft is also my president. And my friend who just wants everyone to feel warm, so they make scarves and blankets is my president. And Luke Cimino, who got a cake as a present and then drove down the road and gave it to strangers. He is my president. And Joe Rogan, my Irish friend, not the podcast host. He's president too, I guess, or maybe just ambassador to Kazakhstan. And my coworker who gave me a beanbag chair when I lived in a completely empty apartment, so I had one piece of furniture. She's my president too. And not just because she was on the city council once and could actually do shit as a president. Giovanni from the Pokemon games is a literal bumblingly incompetent cartoon villain, so he's probably the opposition party. But this isn't about him, this is about presidents. My friend who brought me cookies on Valentine's Day because he knew I was struggling, he's the president now. And so is Stacey Abrams, and Carmen Sandiego, and whoever picks Sean Evans to be press secretary, also president. And Norval Rogers is my president because, like, he knows where all the best sandwiches live and will make sure our strategic mustard reserves are always perfect. And every time I start to write president, I automatically start to type friend. And I motion to set up a committee to investigate why I love all my friends so goddamn much. And I'd like to follow up with a motion to break for lunch. President Shaggy, lead the way. I yield my remaining time to the chair.
I like to imagine that Shaggy there is both Shaggy from Scooby-Doo and Shaggy the poet involved in the National Poetry Slam, because I would vote for either of them. Or both. They could run, yeah, one president, one vice president. That's 2024. I'm going to see if that can happen. Thank you, Barrett. That was remarkably on brand and wonderful. Loved it. Holly, you were up next.
Oh, I do not want to follow that. That was so incredible. Thank you, Barrett. That was really good. I also wanted to do a whole list of people, but I got hung up on the first one because I don't know. I want to write about my kids, but like writing about kids is corny because people make it corny, and I don't think it has to be. So anyway, I'm just writing about my kids again. Today, I elect Brandon Jude Carter, 8 years old, my president. The middle part of his name is from the Beatles song, and he knows he's the better part of my sad song. And when he's in power, oh, this is the little one. This is Holden. He's the second part of my poem. I haven't got there. Oh, come back in a minute. Okay. And he knows he's the better part of my sad song. And when he's in power, he will see us all in our most despondent and distressed and depressed. And he will bring us Kleenex and tell us he loves us and learn to open his own juice boxes early on. And he will talk about how hard it is to control emotions like he's seen the whole world already. And it will be hard to believe he hasn't. The way he's seen all this sadness but gone on loving us like we're unbroken and whole and good enough as we are. And we will only notice our leader is in 3rd grade when we look down for a moment to notice his shoe is untied.
You should not have been afraid to follow. That was a great poem.
Yeah, that was
And
awesome.
here he is making a cameo right there.
Yeah. Thank you. Jonita.
Okay. Mine's more so of a list, but like, yeah.
Cool. List poems are a thing. Rock on.
But the title is Fighters. Okay, so my president is Mariah, who never deemed me lazy and had a solution to everything, confidence flowing off her shoulders like a cape. My president is Tiana, who reminds you you are more than your mistakes. And your voice fades away, she reaches out and she hears, my president is Faith, who doesn't know how to let go of her own dreams when she holds onto yours. My president is all of my friends in the 7th grade, who knew how to answer my questions without making me feel dumb, who wiped the sweat off my hands when I wanted to let go of the cliff. My president is the Gen Z TikTokers who believe in the right thing no matter what the world throws at them, and will show you how to too. My president is all the queer kids who are out and about and continue to exist despite the world. My president is the toddlers at Walmart who yell at the top of their lungs, why is that old man not wearing a mask? My president is those who keep fighting for us long after I pretending those issues don't exist, long after the bullets shot through their bodies and riddled the streets.
That was an excellent list poem. Thank you very much. That was great. Yeah, this is a talented group. I'm excited. Jeff, you are up next.
All right. I didn't get that far with it, but I do have an idea here that I started with. This one is called Dead Presidents. If Fred was president, everyone would receive a pair of pink sequence pants and a 1976 Mercury Cougar. If Jen was president, she would be inaugurated while we drink a 30 rack driving down Penny Road. Whatever comes out of Les Claypool's bass is our nation's anthem. That's all I got.
Cool. I look forward to hearing more of that at some point. And eventually, I'm going to be able to make it to a Friday night reading. Will it be tomorrow night? No one knows. But maybe. I'm going to try.
I hope it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always see you. Yeah, definitely.
I always try and make it, but yeah, Friday nights getting home from work is sometimes difficult.
No, I know how that is. Definitely. Yeah. We're there till 10, so
Okay.
Coming late is totally allowed.
Cool. Thank you. Hans, you are up next. Oh, you are muted, Hans.
Okay. Can you hear now? Yeah. Okay. This is a piece of short fiction I wrote. It's about 300 words long. It's a microfiction. But you mentioned something about different characters coming into a single person at the end of it, and that's sort of what I tried to do here. So we'll see what happens. The climb to the bus stop is steep and almost measures out as anaerobic. It is a distance told by the trudging feet of blacks and whites, the same person. That person fights the slope. That person wonders where there will be victory. And for a moment, all hangs in the balance. That person is a man sitting crumpled on a bus bench, seems vulnerable, and steps to stand for a new occupant, so that the person is split in two, uncertain of whether care or combat is the answer. Both board the vehicle and fight for a destination begins. Minutes are spent, one person a mix of passengers, tense in a public place, lowers a boom and pulls a cord. That person wins out, steps into streets to find any personal end. Nervous and chittering thoughts reaching the unbreaking point. The unbroken, the person is the customer of a coffee shop, and any mocha latte hangs a high point end. A point is satisfied. Left adrift, there is an uncertain descent, and that person, another person, exits the shop. Air brakes wheeze a stop, and the bus chugs slowly through the city, smashing and winning potholes. the motion of a public blue length of train like. There is a request for passengers to exit the back door, and civility involved forces a lock to, therefore that the permanent public as a transport and shared by all. The bus stop might be a mile in the person's steps distant from the hulk of the apartment to come. The sidewalk there runs in wide curves through a field next to a parallel curve of street and paces opposite soccer turf and netted goals. The person sees predicted apartment that rises in angles and planes, squares and rectangles. The goal score wins reads everyday victory of that person split in two, one in motion and one settled and home who has beat the routes. Well, sort of got it, but yeah.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. All right. So that was the generative portion. We're at an hour, which is, I think, the endpoint that you had in mind, Matt. Is that the?
Say that again.
We're at an hour, which I think was the endpoint for the workshop. What I'm going to do is I'm going to include in the chat, like I said, I do like suites of prompts based on a book. So I'm going to link the rest of the Denez Smith prompts, which I think there's 12 prompts because a lot of Homies is about like kind of re-engaging with the dozens in a positive manner. So I chose a dozen prompts. I would love to see if somebody else like wants to put together like a rough draft manuscript based on these prompts. If you do, if it inspires you to write even 2 poems or 3 poems, I would love to see them. I'm putting it in the chat. Whoops, right now.
Awesome.
And I have a website called crookedtreehouse.com. And if you go under the interactionality section, there's all sorts of prompts. And also, if you are interested in purchasing, I have a book called Tips from the Bar, which is both my 100 favorite prompts from the first like 6 years of giving out weekly prompts at the Cantab, intersecting with poems that people wrote to the prompts by regulars from the Cantab, including Jeff Taylor, who's in the room tonight, and a bunch of other Cantab poets. So yeah, if anyone's interested in that, you go to a website called the Paper Asylum, paper-asylum.com, and there's a page called Crooked Treehouse Press where you can order books, and this is one of them. With a photograph by Marshall Goff, the official Cantab photographer, on there, which shows one of the largest, but not only cracks in the bar at the downstairs of the Cantab Lounge where the poetry slam happened. All right. So yeah, that's it. Thank you everybody for reading tonight. That was an absolute blast. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you everybody who shared. I want to thank Humanities Nebraska who helped make this possible. We're the Nebraska Writers Collective. We run it, but we get help from all kinds of wonderful folks. Adam, you also, though, before you go, you have books of your own poetry out. What can you tell us about them and where they live?
They're also at Paper Asylum. It's not just the Tips from the Bar. I am slowly putting up all of my chapbooks and old books, but I started last night. So right now there's only 6 of them up, and they're not all my stuff. There'll be more things by other people as I kind of branch out, but again, just started yesterday. There's a bunch of like $5 limited chapbooks, which are all just like paper, but with full color covers, and they're all on a theme. Many of them are when I got out of my coma in 2019 and didn't know what I was going to write, I asked people to suggest, to like give me a list of prompts. People would give me like 5 or 6 questions and I would write to those. And some people did really serious things, which is how I got Singed, which was like, hey, here are some health questions for you. And some people were ridiculous, like Sam Cha, who gave me variations on the Culture Club's Karma Chameleon song, which I turned into a book of poems, because don't give me a sarcastic list of prompts and not expect me to write something to them. My actual long form book that's up there is The End of Lucidity, which is a combination of interactions, like prompts that I wrote towards other people's books, kind of like the Suite of Prompts thing, that is on the Crooked Treehouse, plus the live blogging of the 2016 election from a basement comic book store in Cambridge,
Oh, wow.
along with a manuscript called Bad at Notes, which was a 24-hour project where I tried to write really short poems about my family and things that were happening. Also on the website is the Cantab anthology, which is a 470 or 80 page book, including, oh, thank you, Baron. The Cantab anthology, including, I think it's 83 different writers from 1992 to 2017 who performed regularly at the Cantab. It includes the staff, slam team members, open mic regulars, a bunch of people. And also the Tips from the Bar book. And sadly, the Cantab speaks to itself. I haven't put up because I think I have the last copy behind me. And also the only version of the Cantab anthology that's up so far is the hardcover, because I sold out of the trade paperbacks, but those will be back in print shortly. And I have not put it up, but there is a giant $150 book called The Working Girls Bible, which includes a ridiculous amount of colored photos that the official photographer Marshall Goff took over the years. I should have brought one out with me, but it's a hardcover. This is a 6x9 size book. The Working Girls Bible is 8.5 by 11. So it's huge. It's a weapon. You're not allowed to take it on a plane. It's a hardcover, and it's full color and has even more poems than the Cantab anthology. Ooh, thank you, Baron. Wow, you're hired. You're my new PR man. So yeah, it's full color. It's got more poems than the Cantab anthology, plus all the poems from the Cantab anthology inside of it. And those will all be up on the website that Baron put in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for being here tonight in Omaha, sort of, all of you.
Thanks for
Sort
having
of
me.
in Omaha, possibly, actually. Who knows?
Yeah. A great meeting those of you who I hadn't met before, and great seeing people some who I see every Saturday and some who I haven't seen in a little bit, but am excited to see. And thank you, Ariana, for reading the Dinez Smith poem for us tonight.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Okay. And this will be available on video. We will send out a link to all the registered folks so you can rewatch and catch anything you might have missed, or just do it again.
Will we edit out the 15 minutes of silence,
Will
we leave that up? Okay. Because that doesn't make for exciting viewing.
No, it's like, here is Adam writing a poem, which, some people might have liked, but I cut out about 14 minutes of that. So
perfect.
All right. Well, have a wonderful night, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. You too. Good night, everybody.